Hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. This is Sunday Politics on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbaloye in Lagos. Some good news coming right here. We have been reporting them for you of another batch of 15 students abducted from the Bethel Baptist Secondary School in Kaduna. They've been released. A top member of the school told Channels Television that the students were released on Sunday after a ransom was paid to the bandits. They were kidnapped on the 5th of July 2021 after bandits attacked school located in Chikun local government area and took away 121 students from their hostels. The bandits later released 28 of them on July the 25th, while some others managed to escape on the 22nd and August the 3rd. So far, 56 have regained their freedom, while 65 others remain in captivity. And in that same Kaduna State is the ugly news of at least 9 people who have been killed and others injured after an attack by unidentified gunmen at Ogwandu Mado village of Zango Kataf local government area of Kaduna State. The gunmen were said to have invaded the village while residents had gone to bed and opened fire, shooting sporadically, killing 9 people and 1 person sustained injury. And another attack in neighboring state of Katsina, still within the northwest region of the country. 12 persons who are feared dead and 6 others wounded after bandits numbering over 300 attacked Druba community in Basari local government area of Katsina State. These are sort of incidents the federal government says it hopes to avert, where clashes occur between farming communities and herders, leading to deaths. And so the president, Muhammadu Buhari, approved recommendations of a committee to review with dispatch 368 grazing sites across 25 states in the country to determine the levels of encroachment. The president's directive followed his approval of the recommendations of a committee chaired by the Chief of Staff to the President, Professor Ibrahim Gambari. Let me show you some of the recommendations of the committee. Take a look at them. They include a collection of field data on 368 grazing reserves across 25 states, and also to assess encroachment and encroachers, and also engagement between stakeholders and their sensitization. Well, they have a terms of reference, and here are some of those terms of reference. It includes to collate from states and confirm the status of grazing reserves, assess the percentage of available land and those with existing encroachment complications for case-by-case solution or resolution in partnership with state governments and the FCT. The committee will also make recommendations for gazetting of ungazetted grazing reserves and create a database of national cattle herders and ensure that grazing reserves are well communicated to all stakeholders. In July this year, governors of southern region of the country met in Lagos, Nigeria, after the first meeting in Asaba in Delta State. And here is their position on open grazing. Take a listen to the chairman of the forum.
The forum re-emphasized the need for state police. The forum resolved that if for any reason security institutions need to undertake an operation in any state, the state chief security officer must be duly informed. The forum frowns at selective criminal administration of justice and resolved that arrests should be made within the ambit of the law and fundamental human rights. The forum set a timeline of Wednesday, the 1st of September 2021 for the promulgation of the anti-grazing law in all its member states.
Before and after that meeting and the statement made by the Southern Governors Forum, there'll be a meeting with the Governors Forum in general, and also the Northern Governors Forum have also met and given similar position. And in fact, some state governors have already started implementing or putting in place laws against open grazing. Let's talk about this, everyone. I'm being joined tonight by the spokesperson of the Northern Elders Forum, Dr. Hakim Baba Ahmed. He joins us from Abuja, Sido. Thank you so much, Doc, for joining us tonight. And let's begin the conversation first and foremost on some of these attacks that we're seeing. Good news that some of these Baptist students are back home, but there are talks about ransom being paid for them. Let me get your view on how we can permanently arrest the kidnap in the northwestern region of the country.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm very, very happy. I just came across this information about the release of the students from the Kajuru local government, which is my state. We have agonized since the day of this kidnap, and it's really great to hear that these students have finally been released. By the same token, it is sad that the cycle of reprisals in southern Kaduna State is becoming deeper. There is a cycle we are beginning to observe that has to be broken if this is going to be contained. Conflicts in the southern part of the state of Kaduna State are very, very, very difficult to resolve because they have deep social and historical roots. And because the communities there are so intertwined that it's really, really difficult arrive at some kind of arrangement that gives every community at least a minimum sense of security. So that is really sad. I'm afraid on the basis of experience alone, this kind of reprisals is going to continue because you don't have a deployment in spite of the fact that there is a special operation in that area and in some parts of Plateau State. You don't have a deployment of military and police that will actually police every community to a point where it feels safe. Reprisals can take place at any time, anywhere. And what all these talks about, Bethel Baptist School, the issues in Zango and Katab, the issue that you mentioned in Zamfara and Katsina, is that the state is failing and failing very badly in securing communities. Huge numbers of communities are literally packing up and leaving their villages and communities and moving to areas where they feel they're safe. The bandits chase them there and attack them. So the countryside in the north, which is most of the north, is becoming extremely vulnerable. It's literally sitting there waiting for bandits and kidnappers to attack it. If the administration of President Buhari has any plans to radically improve the manner communities and individuals are protected, it's going to take a long time to manifest. One, because you need to improve the capacity of the military and the police and the intelligence services, and this takes time, it takes resources, and we haven't seen the kind of mobilization that is required to achieve this. Secondly, the communities are becoming desperate. You hear governors now talking about telling citizens to protect themselves openly. Governors are saying to the communities, protect yourselves. And that means only one thing. No matter what kind of interpretation you give it, the governors are saying, if they attack you with guns, find guns. They would say it in this language, but that's the only way. How do you protect yourself against guns, RPGs, sophisticated armaments, except you buy your own gun, buy your own bullets, and defend yourself? That's how bad it is. And we need to recognize this. This conflict is going to get worse. The more the state fails to provide security to communities, the more communities will become desperate. And when you begin to hear governors now saying, you're on your own, find a way to protect yourselves, you are literally talking about anarchy. And that's the situation where we are.
So it takes me to some of the decisions that the president came up and when he gave the directive and approvals on the grazing reserves in 25 states, 368 grazing reserves. And part of it stemmed from what the presidency said, there are security issues, the clashes between the communities, between herders, between farmers. This is age-long. And from your own point of view, there's been talk about Ruga. There's been talk about the southern governors and the governors generally saying that we can no longer allow cattle to move around freely, openly, which has been one of the major issues of the clashes between farmers and herders. But this directive of President Buhari for the committee to commence their work or to continue with their work, what do you make of it?
Well, I would ask the question, if I had a chance to ask the president, what do you intend to do with this data? First of all, there's a huge amount of data that ordinarily should tell the president. A lot of research has been done, including one done by the convener of the Northern Elders Forum and a few other people, Professor Ango Abdullahi, that outlines exactly where those 360 odd grazing routes and reserves exist. On paper, they exist. In reality, a lot of them have been overtaken by large urbanization, encroachment, which has been licensed and by law because governors have signed documents and papers that allow people to build on them. And most of all, now they don't exist to the degree that they may be physically there, but it is very, very dangerous for any Fulani man and his cattle to traverse those places, even though they exist on paper as legally established grazing routes and reserves. But this begs the question. The Nigerian Constitution vests land in states, vests the power to administer those lands in governors. I would have thought that, and again, I have to say this, I'm not a lawyer, but I would have thought that the president would be availed the best legal advice, which is to remind him, if he doesn't know, that the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria will be severely stretched to support him. Governors can actually repeal grazing routes and grazing reserves that exist in their state by virtue of the powers that they have. And so all they need to do is to say, okay, maybe they existed, they were designed 50, 60, 70 years ago, but now I don't want them to exist in my state, and I have the powers to repeal those routes and reserves. And then it will have to be an issue of what the president intends to do then. So coming forward to him and say, Mr. President, we can show you a Nigerian map that outlines every route and every reserve that exists. It's not very difficult. What is the difficult thing is, what does the president want to do with these routes and reserves? He has a number of options. He can insist, he has the right to insist that governors who are signing banning laws, banning open grazing, allowing encroachment or obliteration of grazing routes and reserves, they are wrong, in which case he can take them to court and insist that those routes and reserves should be freed and restored back. That's one option. The second option could be that he should engage with governors. Gentlemen, this is not a federal problem. It's not a northern problem. It's not a Fulani problem. It is a Nigerian problem. The Fulani and his cattle is a Nigerian issue. It's not a northern issue. It's not a federal issue. It is the Fulani has a right to move in areas where he can find food and fodder and food for himself anywhere in the country. The existence of grazing routes and reserves is not a favor to the Fulani. Think of the irony. This country is blessed in so many ways. Two of them is that God gave us a huge amount of land and a huge amount of livestock. It's a failure of Nigerian leadership that we cannot manage these two assets. This is what all these things tell about. Is it impossible to find the kind of leadership that will say there is a way in which you can both use this land and allow the asset that is our livestock to coexist? This is the fundamental failure of leadership in this country. I'm not saying this problem started now. It started a long time ago. So governors that are signing open grazing laws against open grazing, governors that would say, for instance, no, please don't come up with this business of gazetted grazing routes, because we can ungazette them tomorrow by signing a law that repeals them, because the power to administer land is vested in us. But beyond that, the question really is, do governors feel an obligation to protect Nigerians who are Fulani and their cattle if they are law-abiding? Do they recognize the fact that the existence of grazing routes and reserves actually serves to protect communities as well as protect cattle and the Fulani? This is the way it does that. If you have designated, known, clearly demarcated routes and reserves, routes and grazing reserves, everybody knows about them. No one should attack Fulani or his cattle if they are operating and staying within established grazing routes and reserves. By the same token, any Fulani or his cattle who veers away from these gazetted routes and reserves breaches the regulations regarding that and is therefore liable to be punished depending on what the punishment is. So it is a very, very effective and safe way in which you can manage both land and livestock. It is established, it is centuries old in West and Central Africa. It has existed in so many places. Now you have politics coming into it. A lot of governors feel that they have the right to insist that the Fulani and his cattle should not be seen in their states. They play to a gallery which sees Fulani and his cattle as a threat, whether they actually manifest that threat or not. They appear in the eyes of people as responding to concerns of people. A lot of these concerns are genuine, by the way. And most of all, they forget the fact that there is a political underpinning to this whole thing. You push away the Fulani, you push away his cattle. You sign laws that says anywhere I see Fulani, I see cattle, anywhere I see Fulani, I'm going to prosecute or I will take other legal steps to do.
But Doc,
the president digs in.
Yeah. Let me quickly add that I'm not sure that is the objective of the anti-open grazing laws, which, by the way, the Federal High Court in Abuja affirmed the position of the state that they have jurisdiction to make those laws. I guess what the governors are saying is that there should be a civil way in which the herders can keep their cattle within range and allow them to ranch or to create ranches where they can easily be able to coordinate and make them habit in those areas. I'm not sure there is any governor in Nigeria. Almost 10 or more states have now put up that law, or made that law happen in their state. But I know the Northern Elders Governors Forum, you were the one who released that statement and you spoke about it, that the position of the Southern governors is such that it's splitting up the country. Is it splitting up the country, or that the Southern governors have realized that this is what is causing the deaths of their own people and they've decided to make laws to stop it?
We're not against open grazing either. We're in support of ranching. We are in support of domesticating cattle. We're in support of modern ways in which both the cattle and the Fulani man can rest from this very worrisome, very tiring, very unproductive way in which it can be done. What we are insisting on is that this haste to sign laws that ban open grazing is both counterproductive. It is very damaging to the spirit of coexistence, and it begs the question. Now, there's a point at which the laws that have been signed to ban open grazing coincide with this idea of rediscovering routes and grazing reserves. If there are routes and grazing reserves, they don't necessarily contradict a law against open grazing. Open grazing exists because there are no routes and reserves. The Fulani roams around wherever he goes because he doesn't have access to what rightfully and legitimately belongs to him in the sense of what government provides. That this is the only way to go, And when you get to this place, you can stop here and you can take water and you can eat, your cattle can eat. And this is the law. But where he doesn't have that, he roams around. Now, you say you don't want open grazing. Fine. You don't want, there are no reserves don't exist anymore. Even if President Buhari wants to reinvent them, he's going to find it very difficult. He has to beg the governors to give him the land to do so, or to allow the leftover of those reserves and routes to come back to reality. And I don't think governors are in the kind of mood, particularly governors in the southern part of the country, are not in the kind of mindset to say, okay, we would allow the return of grazing routes and grazing reserves. So these things are interrelated. The point I'm making is that the Fulani issue is a national issue. It should not be treated as if it's a problem for somebody else. It's not a southern issue, it's not a northern issue, it's a national issue. And both the president and the southern governors are wrong in the manner in which they're going about it. If the president thinks he can ram the idea of these grazing routes and reserves down the throat of governors, then he either doesn't understand, he's getting the wrong legal advice, he's not worried about the politics and the security of his decision, and I'm afraid he's going to come unstuck, because I don't see any way in which he can insist that grazing routes and reserves, particularly in the southern part of the country, should be retrieved, dusted, and made operational. Even if they are, it would be a very foolish Fulani man who would take his cattle through a designated route and reserve on paper, simply because President Buhari says, look, you can go to Ebonyi, just follow this route and keep going. Nobody would do that. He's not protecting even people who are not carrying cattle around the country, not to talk of a Fulani man who has to traverse huge territories with a lot of hostility.
Yeah.
What about security? Even if you can
let me jump in quickly, Doc. Yeah, let me jump in quickly.
Sure.
One of the worries, I spoke with the governor of Kano State exclusively on this matter. And one of the worries of these governors, I guess you're a Fulani man yourself, Dr. Akim Baba Ahmed, and one of the things that he raised is the infiltration of foreign Fulanis into the country, and which he said they're difficult for them to identify who they really are. And these are the guys who come into the country, attack innocent Nigerians and farmers, intrude into the farmlands of farmers in the southern or the other part of the country, and go into the forest, perpetrate this evil, kill people, maim people, and run out of the country, because they cannot be able to hold them accountable to it because they freely move. Now, how difficult is it for the nomadic Fulani man to change the orientation or the cultural belief that he can only do his trade by moving around the country? Because those who argue that this is a business idea and no part of the country should be favored, everybody should be given an open field to operate. So a Fulani man should not be giving such an open trade policy that he can move just around. These are some of the issues that have been raised. How do you identify the killer Fulani man who come from perhaps other parts of the country, other parts of the world or in the region?
I think that's a fair question. I think you do know. I hope you do know that Ganduje is even more of a Fulani man than myself. I mean, he's a bona fide, true, genuine Fulani man. I'm sure he has a herd of cattle. So he should know. Ironically, the best people to police Fulani is the Fulani. If you identify the Nigerian Fulani and you don't want other Fulani to come into Nigeria, there's something called the ECOWAS protocol. What the Nigerian government needs to do is to take this issue up and address this at a level where other nations, where Fulanis traverse and come into Nigeria because the climatic changes in the climate makes it necessary for cattle to move around. We don't want your Fulani coming in. Keep your own Fulani there and let's deal with our own. The Fulani who lives in Nigeria, who is being accused of submitting to the foreign Fulani, or who our own Fulani is law-abiding. Their Fulani are lawbreakers. They don't respect our law. They do these things. the best people to know this is the Fulani. The Fulani knows his own people, and he knows the ones that come in. Unfortunately, the Nigerian state does not want to allow the Fulani to become part of the decision-making process. Everybody sees him as a threat. Everybody sees him as a problem. Everybody sees him as something to sweep away. And when you hear a governor of Kano, like the governor of Kano State, say, oh, it's the foreign Fulani, how the hell does he, forgive my language, how does he know this? If he's Fulani and he knows the Nigerian Fulani, he's a governor, an APC governor, with the president governor. Why doesn't he come and tell President Buhari, Mr. President, then 90% of the problems of the Fulani is caused not by the Nigerian Fulani, but by the foreign Fulani. So this is what we do to the Nigerian
But then,
Fulani.
how do you then handle...
them.
Yeah, how do you handle the matter of finding the Fulanis that, I mean, when I was growing up, we called them Bororos where we grew up. That's kind of nickname that you gave them because they had their sticks.
That's the name. That's the name.
Yeah, and they had their sticks, but now we have these herders with AK-47. And it has, in fact, been linked into this issue of banditry because some of them say, reported that in some of these communities in the Northwest region, that some of these guys in the shape and form of herders, they come with their herd and they kidnap and kill people. They come in the shape and form of the average Fulanese. Then how do you then handle, how did it get into the point that we now find, other than the stick, we now see them with AK-47?
Well, you see, this is, again, I think part of the problem is that those who have responsibility for maintaining law and order and security are poorly informed about a lot of these things. Look, if you go to places in Zamfara, and it's the papers, a lot of some of these papers actually take pains to investigate. A large number of the people who kidnap people, who keep them, who the banditry, are actually Nigerians. They know their fathers. We know where they come from. We know the villages they grew up in. We know where they were 10 years ago. We know where they are now. Read some of the papers, and they will tell you, this bandit who is known by this name, his father is this, and he's from this place. We know. This is a very complicated issue. The bottom line is this. It is important for Nigeria to sit down and try to analyze, what is this Fulani issue? What is it that we can handle? And what is it that represents the kind of issue that we need to collaborate with others to deal with? But this business of just passing the problem around, oh, there is a lawful Fulani, there is a foreign Fulani, there is another one. The problem is that the Fulani has become a problem. Fulani as an issue has become a problem, and the Nigerian state has neither the thinking capacity, it is not willing to go beyond the normal bandits and kidnappers, and as a consequence of that, the problem is just getting worse. You need to put this problem on the table and look at it. Now, you ask the question, how do we know what solution, for instance, is feasible? In the next 1 year, how do you deal with the bandits that are holding huge numbers of cattle and people in Zamfara, in parts of Niger State, in Kaduna State? How do you deal with them? Are they Nigerian bandits? Do they come from Chad? Do they come from Mali to Nigeria, take land, take territory? Are there convergence? Are we beginning to see a convergence between Fulanis in bushes as well as extremist fringe religious groups? Is that real? Are we seeing this? Is the Fulani now feeding on the limitations of the Nigerian state in terms of defending communities and therefore literally taking and keeping territories and getting lawful people to run away and move away from them? All these are fundamental issues, and you cannot solve them unless the government really sits down and looks at this problem. All right. You need the governors on board. You need a president who is receiving quality advice, quality information. You need the Fulani, the leadership of the Fulani, as well as other people who are in touch with this Fulani, to sit down and tell you how serious this problem is. It can be solved. This is the whole thing about this Fulani thing. It can be solved. But
we look at the solution.
Mechanism.
Yeah. Let's take a breather, Doc. We need to take a breather. And when we return, we'll look at the solution and also the legal angles. Mr. Femi Falana will be joining the conversation, and it will be providing some legal angles to some of these knotty issues. Don't go anywhere, everyone. We will be right back. Thank you so much, everyone. Welcome back to the program. We've been speaking with Dr. Hakeem Baba Ahmed, a spokesperson of Northern Elders Forum on the grazing reserves and President Buhari's directives. Let's now get some legal angle to this matter. Mr. Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, he joins us from Ibadan in Oyo State. Thank you so much, Senior Advocate, for joining us tonight. And let's get your view. Earlier on, I showed our viewers the information in respect of what the President's directive is on the grazing reserves and the task that is giving the Professor Ibrahim Gambari Committee, the recommendations that have been given and the terms of reference. Let me get your view on that position of the president. Does it have any kind of meeting point between what the governors are saying, the northern governors, the governors forum, the southern governors? Does this president grazing reserve, does it have any relationship? Does it have a handshake with what the governors of the states are saying?
Well, with profound respect, I think the point will have to be made, and I think Dr. Ahmed made that point earlier, that you need a united action. You need a national resolution of this crisis. You need a scientific solution to this problem. You need a modern solution to this problem. As far as the law is concerned, the president cannot, with profound respect, be talking of looking for grazing routes in 2021 Nigeria. The Northern Governors Forum, the Southern Governors Forum, even Miyetti Allah and all other relevant stakeholders have come to the conclusion that open grazing is obsolete and no longer relevant. In this particular instance, apart from the Federal Capital Territory, the land in every state in Nigeria is vested in the governor on behalf of the people. And I think that was the point Dr. Ahmed was making, that the president cannot impose any land policy on the state governor. So you will need, some unity of purpose here. Under the Land Use Act, the president has no control over land outside the Federal Capital Territory. And I think that has to be made very clear. Again, talking about the politics of open grazing, as far back as 2018, the federal government had come up with a policy called National Livestock Transformation Plan, including ranching. Based on that policy, which has been adopted by the entire 36 state governors or governments, I am aware that the Kano state government, which perhaps has the most elaborate policy on this, which is called Ruga Settlement, has begun ranching in that state. I'm also aware Kaduna state has also engaged in ranching. Taraba State has acquired land for ranching and has made an announcement to that effect. Now, on 16th of July this year, the presidency announced that the sum of 6.25 billion naira had been allocated to the Katsina state government for the purpose of ranching. On that occasion, the governor of the state, Aminu Bello Masari, came out to confirm that indeed, as of that time, 5 billion naira had been received by the state, and that in a matter of weeks, ranching will commence in that state. One therefore wonders where the idea of grazing routes or reserves is coming from. So if the state governments have adopted the ranching policy of the federal government and they're already investing in it, and the government has given money to one state, what is required under the Constitution, since there is equality, before the law, the federal government has to make available to each of the state government 6.25 billion naira like has been made available to Katsina State, so that ranching can begin in earnest in the country. And that will solve this problem once and for all. So the government, the federal government, has to go back to its own policy on this matter, which is the National Livestock Transformation Plan. We can't go back to the policy of the 60s.
So you disagree?
Policy that was applicable under the colonial regime.
So, Mr. Falana, you disagree with this concept or the idea, the task given to this committee and the directive given by the president? You disagree with it? You think that is not in consonance with what the governors, the anti-open grazing laws that the governors are putting up in their states?
No, it's not just about disagreement. It is whether the policy is in consonance with the Land Use Act, which is the law that guides land management in Nigeria today. So I'm saying, under that law, the federal government cannot impose any land policy on any state government in Nigeria.
So does it look like an imposition? Because if you look at it, from the terms of reference of that was given to the committee, it includes that they collect data from states. They also case-by-case resolution in partnership with state governments and the SCT, and recommend gazetting of ungazetted grazing reserves. You don't think that this is the right thing to do?
No, I thought the president had already given instructions to the Attorney General earlier to produce the grazing, gazette. And we did say at that time that there was no time that this policy was of general application in the country. We are now being told that reserves are going to be gazetted. What on earth is going on? And I think the point again is this: whether you are going to consult the state governments or not, we have left this stage of looking for grazing routes. We are now talking about ranching. Governors, state governments are already investing in ranching. The federal government has already given money to Katsina state government. And the same sum of money must be given to every state that is willing to begin ranching. And once we can do that, the results that the federal government is looking for will now be incorporated, will be part of the ranching policy.
Of the grazing reserves for you is a no-no and it should be killed. Is that it?
Well, that is what the law is saying. And that is what modern animal husbandry is saying. Open grazing can no longer be allowed in this age and time.
So, I mean, if you look at one of the issues that I took up with Dr. Ahmed is the reaction of the Northern Elders Forum when the governors made an open statement, and the Southern governors made an open statement forcing Asaba. They said, look, they will no longer allow the movement of cattle from the northern part of the country to the southern part of the country. And part of the statement, which the Northern Elders Forum came up with, they said that it's like an ethnic monster to whip up sentiments in the country.
Well, I did say on that occasion, Sheung, that we must stop looking at this problem as a north-south crisis. If the Northern Governors Forum, even before the Asaba meeting, had taken a decision that open grazing is causing problem in the country, that open grazing is obsolete, and that we should move and embrace modern animal husbandry, which ranching is all about. And that has been incorporated in the federal government's National Livestock Transformation Plan. So why are we going back again, causing more problems for the country and causing more problems for the herders?
So this
North-South agenda, that is a national policy on this matter, and that is a policy by the federal government, which is meant to address this problem. So we must go back to the policy of the federal government, which has been adopted by the 36 state governments.
I know that, for example, when the governor of Ondo State came up with the forestry law and this issue of how he's going to ensure that the Amotekun Corps and all those who operate in the forest without permission will be taken out and will not be allowed, so to say. We had that conversation and you were given the position of the law. Dr. Baba Ahmed also raised the issue of ECOWAS protocol because this time some governors are saying, we do not know who these armed Fulani herders are. How do you handle that? How do you implement the ECOWAS protocol? If some of these elements who are coming to kill innocent Nigerians are non-Nigerians and we cannot identify them and they come in the shadow of herders to kill people, how then do we handle it?
Sure. Majority of the state government in Nigeria have in place valid and subsisting forestry laws. The Ondo state government has a forestry law under which it is a criminal offense for anybody to commit trespass on the forest reserves of the state government without authorization. And that is the position with many state governments. And what I did say on that occasion was that forest reserves in the country, which are part of the land in every state in Nigeria, are the business of state government. A few weeks later, the federal government announced through the secretary to the government of the federation that state governments should control the forest reserves in their state. The federal government had already abandoned its initial policy on that matter, having read the law. With respect to ECOWAS, again, I want to appeal to Nigerians to appreciate that there is no protocol of the ECOWAS that allows illegal movement of persons and goods in the region. What you have in place is the protocol on free movement of persons and goods, of establishment. Articles 3 and 4 of the protocol allow each member state of the ECOWAS to man to guide its borders. So there is no unrestrained influx of foreigners. There's no provision for that. So you cannot enter any member state of the ECOWAS without a passport or laissez-passer. So you must have your traveling document before you are admitted to any country in West Africa. So let nobody give the impression that, because of the ECOWAS protocol on free movement, anybody can just enter Nigeria as of right. No, you must show evidence that you are coming to the country. And if you are bringing animals, articles, of trade, you are bringing animals under the Diseases Act of the government, of the federal government. The animals being brought to the country must be examined to ensure that they are not bringing diseases to the country. That is the law.
But is the law being implemented? Is the law being implemented, Mr. Falana? Which agency of government is supposed to implement this law?
It's our duty to draw the attention of the government to its own duties and responsibilities under the law. But let nobody give the impression that anybody can move cattle from Niger or from Mali or Senegal to Nigeria without examination of the animals and without the production of your traveling document.
I'm asking Mr. Falana, can you tell us which agency of government is supposed to be handling this implementation of this protocol, these laws?
The Federal Ministry of Agriculture is empowered to implement the provisions of the Animal Diseases Act. The Immigration Department, the Customs Department are empowered by law to man and ensure that nobody enters Nigeria without a traveling document.
Let's for a moment move into yet another topic of great interest. And it was one that you were deeply involved with in also, is the matter of the allegation of diversion of funds that were recovered. And it was a few days ago that Nigeria's 36-state government jointly sued the federal government at the Supreme Court over alleged illegal diversion of over 1.8 trillion in recovered loot. They're also alleging diversion by the federal government of 450 billion worth of non-cash assets recovered proceeds of crime since 2015. Mr. Falana, the Attorney General of the Federation has since reacted, and this is the response of the Attorney General to that claim and the allegation. The federal government says through the Attorney General's office, quote, "For the avoidance of doubt and the purpose of setting the record straight, the application of the looted funds can only factor within the context of mutual understanding and negotiations of international and multifaceted jurisdictional and territorial legislative issues. The recovery of stolen assets and the subsequent uses to which these funds may be employed are subject to international agreements between Nigeria and the affected countries, thereby bringing conflict of laws into contemplation. Importantly also, these repatriated funds are based on cooperation and mutual assistance agreement." End of quote. How do you react to the response of the federal government on this?
With profound respect to whoever issued that statement, I'm sure the federal government has not studied the case. This case, by the way, was filed in June this year on the instructions of the Nigerian Governors Forum. And the issue is very narrow, i.e., money recovered from the looted wealth of the country. What should happen to it? And there are two issues here. The recovered loot from abroad is only a part of the entire loot that has been recovered. A lot has been recovered by the EFCC and the ICPC locally. So you can't talk of international agreements when you are talking of money taken, diverted from the NNPC or the central bank, money that should have been warehoused in the Federation account. If such fund is recovered, it must be paid back into the Federation account for distribution by the three tiers of government. So the federal government cannot alone recover this money and pocket it. Secondly, for money recovered abroad, particularly the Abacha loot, which again ought to have been paid to the Federation account, it's common knowledge that a former national security advisor, I think Alhaji Gwazo, was in charge of removing the money from the central bank, from the foreign reserve account of the federal government. And from those federation accounts, the money was moved to different bank accounts around the world, about 140 banks all over the world. A substantial part of the money has been recovered. Whatever agreements, whatever mutual agreements Nigeria enter, the federal government of Nigeria decided to enter into any agreement with any country. As far as the law is concerned, Section 12 of the Constitution, no treaty, no agreement enter between Nigeria and another country can have a force of law in Nigeria without the National Assembly making a law to that effect without domestication. But beyond that, you also have Section 162 of the Constitution, which provides that the money belonging to the Federation, revenue of the Federation, shall be banked, shall be warehoused in the Federation account. And once the money is recorded in the Federation account, there is a method of distribution in line with the laws of the country. So there is no way the federal government can recover money from abroad and from Nigeria and claim that, oh, this fund is bound and is guided by international agreement. Which agreement? Between who and who? Can you sign an agreement in respect of the fund that should belong to the three tiers of government? And by the way, in 2005, the Olusegun Obasanjo administration yanked $12.4 billion from the Federation account to pay the London and Paris clubs, you know, for the indebtedness of Nigeria. But after the payment, the state government and the local government challenged the federal government that this fund does not belong to you alone, and therefore you must refund our own part of the money. And that has been done by the federal government.
Okay.
It is the same policy here.
Yeah.
You can enter into any agreement, but the agreement must be read subject to the Constitution. Very simple and straightforward. And in any case, Seun, this is not a matter for a public debate. There is already a case in court. Instead of issuing a corporate statement, the federal government should join issues with the state government and the local government on who is supposed to be giving what from this money.
All right, let's close the program now. Let me get Dr. Hakeem Baba Ahmed's final thoughts. Just in about, I have less than 1 minute to go. In about 30 seconds, Dr. Hakeem Baba Ahmed, do you have your final thoughts before we go?
Yes. First, there's nothing that Mr. Falana said there that I disagree with. Secondly, I think it is time that President Buhari leads a major, comprehensive, and an honest discussion on what this Fulani threat represents. It is multifaceted, it is deep, it's very threatening, and is likely to affect the future of this country in more ways than we understand. Everybody must be involved. This piecemeal approach and this tendency to regionalize the problem and to create the impression that the Fulani is a problem of one part of the country or another one is very dangerous. It's not going to benefit anybody in the long term, and is not a solution. It is time for the federal government and the governors and all stakeholders to actually sit down and deal with what exactly the Fulani threat represents in this country.
Dr. Hakeem Baba Ahmed, thank you so much for your thought tonight. He's the spokesperson of the Northern Elders Forum. Mr. Falana, you have 20 seconds for your final thought. Is that possible?
Well, just to call on the federal government and the state government to have an urgent meeting with respect to resolving the crisis of open grazing in the country, so that all hands will be on deck in implementing the policy of the federal government on National Livestock Transformation Plan, including ranching. Thank you very much.
There's been some kind of a roundtable consultancy and a national debate that might be very, very useful for the federal government going forward to save lives in these matters. I must sincerely thank my two guests tonight on the program, Mr. Femi Falana and Dr. Hakeem Baba Ahmed. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming tonight on the program. And that's our show for today, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm sure Hakeem Baba. Bye-bye.